Everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Heart and Hustle Podcast. I've got a very special guest with me today, and we were just talking before we hopped on live here, but this individual is the first professional speaker that I've had on the podcast. You also have a super strong faith, and I've always appreciated that about you. And being able to kind of hear why your faith is so prominent in your life, but also kind of how you got into the professional speaking space is something that I think a lot of the audience can benefit from.
Absolutely.
So the Heart and Hustle Podcast in general is all about trying to just give people a better understanding of the path of what it takes to be successful. And there are so many elements in that. And the reason why we do what we do is because I think there's a younger generation of people behind us who are looking for examples of people like you and I. And so whatever we can do to kind of show them that there's certain, I would say, columns of consistency in their life is super beneficial. So everybody, I've got Hunter Chaney with me today.
That's right.
Bro, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate
for having
you.
me. Excited
Absolutely,
to be here.
Absolutely, dog. So why don't you let everybody know a little bit about yourself? Like, what's the background of Hunter? What would be the elevator pitch of you as a person?
Man, I don't know what I would say on an elevator, but yeah, my name's Hunter Chaney, 31 years old, was born in Maui. Basically, Vegas has been home for me forever, raised out here since kindergarten. Went to high school out here, played volleyball, went to college. That's how we kind of met, throwing it back in the day. But yeah, kind of where it just all started. At 21 years old, I felt like this calling in my life to work at a church. And so I started literally from the very bottom of doing an internship with junior high kids. And so basically it was a 2-year unpaid internship, and you're just kind of throwing church on the weekends for junior high kids. And so kind of did that for 2 years, really enjoyed it, learned a lot. That's kind of where like my speaking engagement, learning how to kind of preach the gospel, preach the good word, and just ultimately learn how to communicate on stage to a large audience. And so I remember my first sermon I did went absolutely terrible. It was so bad. But it was probably one of the most pivotal moments in my life, because I still have video of it. You know, I watch back and I think, man, how did these kids listen to me? It's so bad. It's so cringeworthy. But I mean, you got to start somewhere, right? But I had this passion to speak. Like, I had this fire inside me that I just couldn't like keep within. I had to share it, you know? And so yeah, I started doing a 2-year internship and was faithful through that process. I worked like 3 jobs. I worked at a nightclub during part of that time, worked at a gym, and also crazy job is I used to sell tortillas to Albertsons. But basically I did whatever it took, you know, to make this internship happen and ultimately, you know, work at the church. And so after that 2 years, I got hired on to work with the high school kids as an associate pastor. And so did that for about 3 years and just worked on, you know, crafting my communication skills, and got to speak in audience over like 2,000 to 3,000 people, which was awesome. And getting to share the same stage as, you know, one of the top pastors in the nation, Judd Wilhite, amazing man, which is a huge honor, incredible blessing. And so yeah, was doing that for about 5 years, and then kind of got a job offer to work in prisons, to basically plant churches inside prisons across the nation. So, man,
what a journey, bro. Let's take it back a little bit.
Let's do it.
You know, one of the things that I've been doing over the last couple of years is I was actually living in Hawaii. So I was living on Oahu.
Island boys.
The culture, bro, there was just absolutely amazing. So you were born on Maui. So does that mean that fam and everybody was there as well?
Yeah, so my aunt and uncle lived out there, and so my mom moved out there to live with her, and then my grandparents were military, so my dad had moved with them. And so just by, I guess, arrangement of the stars, my parents had me there, and then
dude, that's
island
so cool.
boy.
Damn, that's so sick. I mean, it's like naturally, this is something that I've always picked up on, like I would say intuitively, is like you have kind of like that island vibe to you. You know what I'm saying? You're very chill. You always seem very chill to me. And it's always not surprising when I hear that people are from the island. I'm like, oh, that's where it comes from. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's kind of just how my parents raised me, just kind of chill, go with the flow. Like, I don't know, trying to just, that's my whole motto, is just going with the flow. Like, there's some things you can plan in life, which is great. But for me, it's just like, let's just see where God takes me, where life takes me, and just go with it.
Man, that faith is so vitally important, you know?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I know is incredibly scary for a lot of people today is the process of public speaking, right? They say it's like almost like the biggest fear in society. So let's take it back to kind of how you got involved with the church and how you start speaking to these younger groups of people. What was those first experiences like for you? Do you have like a pivotal memory back in the day?
Yeah, it was probably my first one, you know, like I think they did like this study or survey of like pastors basically spending close to 40 to 60 hours of prep time to deliver a 15, 17-minute message. So I would spend all week crafting this message, you know, like you're trying to think of stories, like think of, you know, verses to use to really engage, you know, with these kids and have it be impactful and really be like, man, that was a great message. I need to hear that. And so for like the first, like beginning of like the first 6 months, I was really trying to be a speaker that I was not. You know, you see all these amazing pastors that have huge platforms and they're just one of the best speakers and like, man, I want to be like that guy. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I was like trying to be one of them and trying to do their style and how they preach. You know, like you have the old Baptists like, amen, brother, amen. And I'm like, that's not me. I'm not going to use that on stage, you know, but I would try because if it worked for them, it could work for me.
Yeah.
You know, so I was really struggling crafting these messages because I really wasn't writing from a place of Hunter Chaney. I was writing from a place of a top pastor in the country, you know? Mm-hmm. So for me, it was a learning process of like, you know what? The best message that I'm going to deliver is being myself and what God is saying in me and through me. And that's it. You know, I don't have to be so creative. Like these kids are going to hear the message, you know, and God's going to work in them and speak to them, you mm-hmm. know? So it could be one little verse. It could be one story. And so for me, like I had to figure out who I am as a communicator, as a storyteller. And so for me, everything was about stories, you know, kind of stories in my life and how it changed and pivotal moments in that area of my life. And so for me, it's just like, I got to use humor. Like it's cool, like to, you know, be a pastor and have humor in your messages and just kind of like figure out my own style and how to communicate. Cause that's what's best going to, you know, reach these kids and reach the people that are listening to the messages. Being myself and, you know, really spending that 40 to 60 hours each week and crafting a message and really allowing God to speak in me and just being faithful to the process.
Yeah.
You know?
Man, it's just like I have gone through a similar struggle. It's, you know, in the space of entrepreneurship, mm-hmm. there are so many examples of what other people are doing. Yeah. And naturally, I think we try and like mirror what other people are doing right. instead of being ourselves. Yeah. And so that process of you finding your voice is just so influential for me because I think we all have that shared experience. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, the fact that you talk about being a storyteller is mm-hmm. also very powerful as well, because I was in a group setting the other night and we were talking about mental health and we were talking about how scary it is. Mm-hmm. And so I opened up the field to everybody and I was like, what does mental health mean to you? And everybody starts talking about their own experiences of feeling confident and feeling in themselves. And as we kind of went halfway through the group, I started talking about what similarities do you see in other people's story with yours? And they were like, well, I mean, I've been through that and I've gone through that exact same stuff. And it's interesting how we always find each other's stories in each other. You know what I mean? It's like we're not so independent, even though everybody wants to be an independent person. We all have this shared life experience. Yeah. And so I love the fact that you kind of had to struggle and go through your voice to be able to find that stuff. Have you kind of had those experiences outside of church and becoming a speaker as well? Like your personal development process? Have you felt like that pressure to kind of be like other people at some points in time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of natural for us as human beings, you know, just like always looking to compare. And I actually used this in a church sermon was... there's like this picture of Michael Phelps and another swimmer right by him, and it's like going for the gold medal. And Michael Phelps is just so focused at the finish line, and the other guy in the other swimming lane's looking right at him. Yeah. You know, and ultimately Michael Phelps won. And so for some reason, that picture is always stuck in my mind. Is like the more I'm looking from the direction that God has me in, just looking at other people's, you know, lives and their purpose, like the more I'm just going to lose track of where I'm going, you know? So for me, it's like really understanding myself and where I'm going, the vision, the mission that God has put in my life and going after it. Like, I also think I always tell people too, like, you know, when they get married at a young age, some people don't get married at, you know, 40, 22 or 40 or 50. And it's like, and for me as a firefighter now, it's like I joined pretty late at 29. Yeah. But there's guys that's getting hired at 18. But it's like we're still there. The destination's there. It's just sometimes our paths are different in getting that. You know, you could be married at 40, married at 22. Like for us, it's all different paths and different timing. You know, so for me, I really rely on the timing of life. Like, okay, you know, I'll be a firefighter at 29 and hopefully be a captain. You know, at 50 or whatever, you know, but it's like there's people that are captains now that are like 30. That's young. But for me, it's like understanding, hey, my path is different and it's okay. And just really being faithful to that process of just like everyone's paths are different, timing's different, and it's good though.
Man, that's that really speaks to me today because I put so much pressure on myself and throughout my entire career in the professional world, right? I've always tried to put pressure on myself because I feel like I should be farther along.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And like that has been one of the things that I would consider a regret is when I pay attention to other people's lanes, I always run a slower race. Right. You know what I'm saying? That's 100%. Super tough. So what I want to talk about next is because you're a firefighter as well, that's incredibly unique. You know, I understand, or I've had a couple buddies, including you, who have gone into the different fire stations across Vegas, and I never knew how competitive that was. Yeah. It's incredibly tough to get into these different stations. So what was kind of like your process like?
So yeah, just kind of give like a little history of how I got into it. So it's right when COVID happened, and, you know, I had my daughter. She was about 3 weeks old, and basically I had this like come to Jesus moment. You know, I was working with the prison ministry, and it was going great. Like nothing bad was happening. But I remember having this moment with my daughter. You know, we're sitting on the couch and I'm holding her, and it's just one of those like, I can't explain it moments. You know, I'm looking at her, I'm like, man, I'm actually a dad. You know, like shit just got real quick. And so I'm holding her, and I'm just been like, kind of like thinking to myself, like, okay, how am I going to be as a dad? What am I going to teach her? What are the lessons that I've learned in life? And how am I going to be the man to her and show her like a husband that she's going to look for into the future? And like, what is our relationship going to be? I remember thinking this moment in my head, I was thinking, man, I'm going to tell her to go after her dreams and just not give up, ever give up. And then I had this moment in my head where I was like, I can't be telling her that because I never went after my dream. And my dream since 18 years old was to be a firefighter. So for me, it was like a great moment, but also a hurtful moment because I'm like, man, who am I as a person? Like, I can't be telling her to do one thing if her dad didn't do it. You know, like for me, like my word is everything. I'm bound to my word. And so for me, I looked at my daughter, I was like, you know what? Now's the time to become a firefighter. So in my head, in that moment, I said, I'm gonna give myself 2 years and I'm gonna give everything I got. And COVID was a huge blessing in disguise for me because it forced me to be at home, and I just studied my ass off. Like 8 hours a day, I was like, I'm going to give it everything I got. And if it doesn't happen within those 2 years, then I know it wasn't meant to be. So I literally just gave it everything I got. I used every connection. Like I got over that weird like awkwardness. Should I hit this person up? Or I don't want to be weird or too needy. I got in this phase, in this mode where I was like, I'm going to give it literally everything I got. Like every firefighter that I know or someone that knows a firefighter, I'm going to use that to my advantage and just study and see what happens. And I know if that at the end of those 2 years, it doesn't happen, in my head, I'd be like, okay, I know it wasn't meant to be. I'm good with that. I can move on and focus on this. Because I never wanted, that was one of my fears is like, you know, being on my deathbed and being like, man, I wish I was a firefighter. You know, what would happen if I became a firefighter? You know, so literally gave everything I got, and thankfully got hired on. And it's in my opinion, one of the greatest jobs in the world. I love doing it. Yeah. It's very exciting, adrenaline rushing, but I totally went on a tangent. Forgot that
was perfect. Okay, because we're talking about kind of the one I wanted to pivot to next was, you know, a lot of people, especially kind of who like listen to and watch the podcast, are in that early stage. And you described it as ACUS. Is that what you said? When you said, so ACUS, when you were talking about like that hesitancy to reach out to people, because that's one of the biggest things very transparently that I deal with. It's like, I always have this internal voice in my head that's like, I don't know if you should. And your realization of, if I don't give everything now, then I'm going to have that regret in the past. It's such a powerful voice. Yeah. But how did you kind of muster up the courage? Was it looking at your daughter? Was it the life scenario? Was it like, you know, going through like praying and like realizing like, I really got to give everything I got here. I'm not going to, you know, be the person I'm saying that I'm going to be.
Oh man, it's a tough question. I think a lot had to do obviously with my faith, and also that kind of internal voice I was telling myself over and over, you know, like, you know, Jesus in the Bible talks about like take every thought captive and make it obedient. So all those like thoughts of fear or negativity or doubt, I literally would think those things. And it's normal for us to, experience fear and doubt. But I really be like, you know what? That's not true. I know what God says about me. I know what God promises. I know what he's commanded me. He's commanded me to be strong and courageous. So I would take that thought of negativity and just make it obedient. Like, nope, that's not true. God has said I am strong. I'm courageous. I'm just going to go after it. So for me, it's just like, it's one of those, stories of like, we have like two wolves in our head, and which one are you going to feed? The one that's positive or negative? That's the one that's going to be the most prominent in your life, is whatever one you feed the most. And so for me, those negative thoughts kept coming. I just would have like an action toward it, like, all right, negative thought comes in. All right, boom, I got to just do it. And I would just do it right then and there, like, oh, I shouldn't hit this person up. I'm like, you know what? Nope, I'm gonna hit them up. See what happens, and it's okay that if they say no, but I'm gonna keep going. So, but yeah, I mean, it's the best way I can put it. Just having that internal dialogue and just using it to your advantage.
I mean, that's really powerful, because I just know that like in the world that we live in today, it's just so easy to give in to that internal voice.
Right.
And, there's a really good book that I often reference here on the podcast. It's called The Untethered Soul. And the analogy that's given to that internal voice is called our roommate. Nice. So one thing that's really interesting about the roommate is we always live with this person, right? This voice. And we've spent so much time with this voice that sometimes we take it as being our own voice. Yeah. And if you can observe those thoughts, then obviously you're in a different perspective to hear that voice. And so the analogy that he uses is like, imagine you were sitting on the couch and you were listening to that internal voice and you're trying to watch a video or a movie, right? Yeah. And it's like, did I put the clothes away in the dryer? Or do you think I should send that text message off? All those little thoughts we have. Yeah. If you were sitting next to a real person, it would be like, dude, shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? And sometimes we have to make that internal voice obedient. Yeah. And I love the fact that you said that, because it's so powerful. But that internal voice is so loud for so many of us. Exactly. And it's often our enemy, you know what 100%. I mean? And we take it at face value, but it's so important to realize that often doesn't give us the best advice in situations, especially when we get outside of our comfort zone. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, we talk about a lot in the church, like, don't give the enemy a seat at the table. Like, he's going to be there. He's going to linger around. But sometimes we set up a table just for him to sit at and eat, and we keep feeding him and wonder why we're experiencing like all these negative thoughts and anxiety, because it's just like the more we keep feeding into this negativity and doubt and fear, the more that's just going to, erupt in our lives. And so for me, I kind of just have that picture in my head. It's like, hey, I'm not like, imagine this table. I'm not going to be feeding him. I'm going to be feeding something that's going to help in my, direction. Yeah. Feed it positive or whatever you call it. But just never give the enemy a seat at the table. So
yeah, man. Well, I'm really proud of you, because one trait that I would describe you as is confident. The way you carry yourself, the things that you've accomplished in life, the challenges that you've taken on, you've really demonstrated confidence through, I would say, conviction, but also evidence of overcoming challenges as well. Yeah. And so do you think that this version of you today is different than the younger version of yourself?
100%. I was the least confident person all
really?
Throughout. Yeah. Middle school, high school, and even college. Like, I had such a low value of myself. Like, I would just walk around with my head down and like was just a picture of someone that was just walking around defeated and not confident at all. And I don't know what age it happened, but I remember just having like this light bulb being like, I actually have control of this. I can be a confident person. It's not like a skill that I have to reach out. Like, no, I have confidence within me. I just have to train it. I have to strengthen it. I have to feed it. And so for me, it's like having this, I don't know if it's alter ego, but it's like, okay, who would a confident Hunter Chaney look like? How would he act? How would he walk in a room? How would he speak? How would he engage with people? And for me, it's like, it kind of became a training session of like practicing being that version of Hunter Chaney. And it wasn't a lie, I'm trying to be someone I'm not. It's just like, no, I can be this person, but how is that person going to act? Because I'm walking around defeated and it sucks. Yeah. And people can tell they can tell the negative energy, the defeated energy. And for me, it's like, I don't want to walk around like that for the rest of my life. Like, for me, it's like we have one life, so I want to use it to my advantage and just be the ultimate Hunter Chaney that I can be. And for me, that person is being extremely confident. And it's not being cocky. I don't think I'm better than anyone else, but I want to be the best version of myself. And so for me, it was something I really had to train, and just kind of everything comes down to mindset, in my opinion. Everything. Belief, vision, whatever it is, all comes into your mind. I'm a huge David Goggins fan, so
yeah, exactly.
mindset is everything. So for me, it's like I was a big fan of Conor McGregor, and for me, I would just literally just watch him and study him and just kind of emulate that same swagger when you walk in a room. Granted, he was extremely cocky, but there was some about his energy and his presence that was like, man, that dude is confident. Like, he's so confident within himself. And so for me, it's like, all right, I got to trust Hunter Chaney. I got to trust my instincts. I got to trust, my vision and just go after it and just be confident, and just practice it. I'd be at home. It's so silly, but I'd just be talking to myself in the mirror. I'd be walking around acting and kind of have this vision of like people interacting with me and saying, hey, that guy's confident. That guy's confident. And just reenacting, And so for me, it just became like second nature of just like, all right, this is who I am now, so.
Dog, that's so powerful. I there's a couple documentaries that have come out in the last couple of years about Conor McGregor, and they go back to like his past when he was just like a fighter with his girlfriend and everything. And it's like the one thing I've always really appreciated about him is his mindset and how he's always been visualizing the future, and he's made everything come true. Yeah, you know what I mean? And like that was something I never experienced or never expected to experience in looking at this guy, because I'm like, oh, the guy who walks in and swaggers into the fight, you know what I'm saying? But like his mindset and how he approaches every single day to be the best version of himself is something that's really stuck with me when I go back to that mental place of this guy's practicing who he wants to be every single day.
Exactly.
Man, that's so powerful.
Yeah. And so you're touching on this, but everything that you were writing down, would come true. That fires me up because I live by that. So in the Bible, it talks about, write the vision and make it plain. And I can't tell you how many times every year in January, I would write down the craziest visions of like what I want to experience that year. Like last year I wrote, I want to have a black Toyota Tundra. Well, this year I got a black Toyota Tundra. Like I didn't have the finances to get a truck, but thankfully, something came along and it worked out. I wanted to reach 230 pounds. I got to 230. And I always save it to the end of the year to look back and be like, man, I hit 8 out of those 9 visions, So I would take that one I missed and put it back again. And I can't tell you how powerful enough that, like, I had this girlfriend way back in the day. I was like, this girl is going to be my girlfriend. I'll never forget it. It was January 9th of like 2013 or 14. And literally the next year, I found it under my bed the same exact day a year ahead, and she was my girlfriend.
Dude, that gives me
how
chills.
I found it. Yeah.
Oh my
and so
God.
that's why, like, from that moment, I was like, I have to write all this down. And it's crazy. I don't know what it is within the universe, the stars, God, but it's like there's so much power in writing down your visions, your goals, your dreams. And for some reason, most of mine have come to fruition. And so for me, it's just like, it's so powerful, and it's biblical as well.
Yeah.
Like I said, like God says to write the vision and make it plain. And so for me, I'm all about just writing the vision down for myself and even being confident. Like I wrote that down too. It's like, I want to be extremely confident. And now kind of being in the dating scene, that's like the number one thing girls always say. They're like, I love how extremely confident you are.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, it's no surprise because, man, I wrote that down. I practice it, and kind of just let God do his thing.
Dude, that is so powerful. There's a phrase that I heard one time, and it was like, when we are in alignment with our true selves, the universe starts to conspire with us. And it's crazy how much stuff that actually like makes into fruition. Yeah. We had another guy who was on the podcast, and you know him, Lionel Miranda. Nice. So Lionel was on here, and one of the things that he honed in on in both of the episodes that we've recorded, so go back and check that out. Absolutely. He talks about, he writes down all of his goals. Yeah. He has whiteboards above all of his toilets in all of the rooms, and they're all the same. And it's like every single year he goes back and looks at the list, and it's 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 things checked off.
It's crazy.
And it's just like something so simple can make such a huge impact on our life.
Absolutely.
Fuck, man, that's so cool.
Write down your goals.
Yeah.
Simple.
Man.
Very simple, but powerful. But yeah, just to touch on kind of what you were saying about being the best version of ourselves. I literally just watched this TikTok like 2 days ago, and I thought it was so true. They basically put like a group of like 12 people in a barn, and they were going to kind of like measure their frequencies. And everyone thinks that love and gratitude is the number one, like highest frequency in how people operate. But it's actually authenticity and being genuine. So being like truly yourself is what's really going to emulate the highest frequency when you walk into, different rooms or, offices, wherever it may be, wherever you go. The highest frequency that you're going to emit is being your authentic self. And so for me, that has always rocked me. Even though I saw it 2 days ago, I feel like I've been living that for the past, 3 to 5 years. I got tired of being someone that was not, or trying to be a version of someone that people would like me. But ultimately it was getting too tiring. I was a huge people pleaser.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, I didn't even know what I liked anymore because I was just liking what everyone else liked so that I could be liked. And so for me, and I think people can catch on, right? They can see that I don't think he actually really likes Taylor Swift or
exactly.
whatever it may be. Like, so for me, the best version of myself and emit the highest frequency to people is just being myself, being authentic, being genuine. Like, I may not agree with someone, and that's cool. I'm still going to be myself, but at the end of the day, we have mutual respect. But even like going on dates and stuff, I don't need to impress these girls. I just got to be myself.
Yeah.
I like what I like. I like what I don't like. And so, yeah, that TikTok video has kind of stuck with me the past 2 days. It's like, for me, I thought love and gratitude would be the highest frequency that people would connect to. But it ends up being authenticity and being genuine.
Bro, it's like, especially in society today, I feel like everybody is so cookie cutter.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Everybody wants to be like everybody else. Everybody does the same stuff that everybody else does, all the morning routines and yada, yada. Yeah. But it's like when somebody walks into a room authentically themselves, unapologetically, it is so powerful that you naturally kind of perk up and you're like, oh, this kid doesn't really care about what anybody's thinking. You know what I mean? And like, that's just so powerful.
Yeah. And for me, like, literally, I'm wearing nail polish on my fingers.
I was going to ask you about this as well. Yeah.
It was all to impress a girl to go see Barbie. And what's crazy is, like, at first I thought it was like one of those like demasculating things, like, but my daughter was doing it, paint my nails, and I walked around. I was like, you know what? Who cares? Yeah. It started to grow on me, kind of little vibe. People were asking about it. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. Yeah. I don't really care.
Dude, naturally, when you walked in the house today, I was like, this kid's got his nails painted. This guy's one confident motherfucker. You know what I'm saying?
And it's just one of those, like, for me, I'm all about, like, symbols and stuff. It's like, okay, another way to demonstrate confidence is like, shoot, why not just walk around with my nails painted? I really don't care.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to bring conversations. And sometimes I wait for those interactions for people to say something. Like, there's people that have given me so much shit for it. And I'm like, hey, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And for me, it just grows like even more confident, even though I know people are going to reject it or make fun of me. It's like, okay, I know it, but hey, who cares? I hate being put into a box. I like to be my own set of vibe and energy. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. Really don't care.
Yeah.
I know people are going to say something, but I know for the most part, like even before I started doing this, I only did this for like 3 or 4 days now, but before I would be too afraid of doing things like that because I'm like, oh my God, like people are going to say things. How are they going to look at me? They're going to have this weird version of myself. For me, I'm like, I know they're going to say stuff. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's whatever. I'm just Hunter Chaney.
Yeah. You know
what? And I'm just going to live life. I honestly don't care. Like for me, it's like I kind of feed off like, I guess the haters, so to speak, of the nail polish, but it just builds confidence, and just trying to not be put in a box, be my own vibe, be unique, and just, I don't expect to do this for the rest of my life, but
right now it's cool.
Yeah, right now it's cool. I'm liking it.
Yeah. There was so in middle school, back when I lived in Michigan, I in 7th and 8th grade won Trendsetter, right, in the yearbook or whatever, and it wasn't something I expected, but it became something that I took a lot of pride in, like subconsciously, because I was willing to be that kid who would show up at school with like the little kids Ninja Turtle backpack and like the pop collars back in the day. And the first time I came into school with the pop collar, everybody was like, dude, put that thing down. Put that thing down. For weeks. And then all of a sudden other people start doing it as well. And I was like, oh, look, you guys just need somebody to lead the way. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like that 100%. Was always something that stuck with me. And I think it's always been a part of like my entrepreneurial journey as well. So a little bit to kind of like let you in on kind of what I've been doing. So I've been in the mental and behavioral health space since 2014.
Nice.
And we started this brand Francis back in 2021. And one of the things that I think we need more leadership in is having conversations about mental health.
Absolutely.
Because we came up in a society where it's always good to be like the tough guy. Do you know what I'm saying? But it's like mental health experiences, or we all experience mental health and we all have our own challenges with that. Yeah. And so it's like, I love being a trendsetter, to be able to lead the way, to be able to open up the door. So other people are like, yo, if this 6'6" kid is talking about mental health, then obviously it's not that bad.
Right.
You know what I mean? I love being able to lead by example. And so I really vibe vibe with you when we talk about confidence and how we stand that stuff up.
Absolutely. No, mental health is so important. And for me, it's like, I'm unapologetic about like going to therapy and stuff, because I think it's like, it's needed. You know, I went through like one of the worst times this past year, you know, in a personal level, and like, I've never experienced anything like this in my life. And so for me, I was like, I need to talk to someone about it. Someone like professional. Like, it's good to talk to your friends and also get that out. But in some instances in our life, we need to sit down and talk to someone in a professional setting. And for me, like, I can't tell you what it's done in my life of, you know, going and talking to a therapist about, you know, what I was going through, all the things I was thinking, and talking about, you know, being at a higher frequency. Like, I had to be authentic with how I truly was feeling, not be this, you know, macho Hunter Chaney of walking in, I can handle anything. It's like, man, at some point I'm feeling extremely weak. I'm feeling defeated. I'm like, obviously needs to change. I need to talk about it. And just even like hearing the coping strategies and different kind of like action steps of like, or becoming more self-aware of the thoughts that were coming in, you know? And so, yeah, therapy is amazing, you know? And it's weird how in this country, like, men going to therapy is seen as like weak, you know, but it's like, man, I can't tell you how pivotal it was for me in my life on a personal level of going to therapy and talking to someone, and, you know, ultimately just becoming more stronger because of that, you know. You know, in the Bible it talks about, for when I am weak, then I'm strong. So it just coming up moments like, hey, and it's okay that I'm weak. You know, we have all different seasons and valleys and hills in our life. And, you know, at that point I was in a valley, and, you know, I needed to go seek help, and just kind of putting that pride aside and be like, hey, I wasn't going around the whole world telling, hey, everyone, I'm going to therapy. But it's just like a personal journey of like, hey, I need to go. Yeah. You know?
And that makes me really happy that you kind of took the conversation in that direction, because if you guys can see on video, Hunter is no small dude. Like, you are literally fucking huge now. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, now that you're like 230 plus, you have to be more than 230 pounds now.
No, I'm at 220. I've been cutting weight a little bit.
Okay, cool. Well, that makes sense, because you got a big trip coming up and you're shredded. So anyway, but it's like having guys in our society that we can look to as like, when I see this kid in the gym, I'm always like, dude, this kid is huge. Do you know what I mean? It seems like we almost assign this, I guess, ideal of what big, strong dudes are. Do you know what I mean? And often it's not being open about our feelings and talking about that kind of stuff. And so it really makes me happy that you are willing to open up about that, to be able to kind of share that, because you're leading by example, and we just need more people that do that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
I appreciate that.
Yeah. And it makes me think about, you know, I think your journey of leadership started very early. Because I remember when I would go to church back in the day, and I would see in kids club the examples of you who are willing to stand up and like show other people the way. Do you know what I mean? So do you ever like consciously think about the impact that you're making on everybody else who's literally like looking up to you?
Yeah. You know, when I worked at the church, you know, for me, it was seeing all like those junior, you know, high school kids, and it also kept me accountable, because it's like, man, should I really be doing this? Because I have all these, you know, 300, 400 kids looking up to me, you know? So for me, like, I've always wanted to be the big brother that I never had for those kids. And so just ultimately just setting a great example, you know, like kind of what you're saying, like there's all these different like stereotypes of like what kids want to be like. And for me, I wanted to be an example to where kids really look up to, like, what would they like about, you know, Hunter Chaney, you know, what kind of version, you know, how would he act? And so for me, it's just like, I wanted to be someone that was strong, confident, loving, but also like kind. I know kind is like seen as like a Sikh word, but someone that's like a good person, you know, that can be big and strong, but also just a good dude. Like, big dudes don't have to be just tough and mean and be an asshole and all that. But for me, it's like, yo, I'm a good dude. I love God. I love people. And I also love to work out. And so for me, I just, like I said, I hate being put in like a different box. I wanted just to be different, you know, because we always had like those mean asshole guys that we had to be like, or be super macho. But for me, it's like, dude, I just want to be a good dude that's super chill, go with the flow, that loves to work out, that loves people, and just ultimately wants to make a huge impact in the world. And so for me, it's like having that vision of myself and just being obedient toward that. And I know the kids would follow it. So
there's You know, so if you follow me on social media, you'll see that I often talk about like positivity and all this kind of stuff. And I was at the gym the other day and I had like a really good pump going and I was looking at myself in the mirror.
Feeling in the world.
Exactly. And I was like, there's a different confidence about being a big guy, but also spreading positivity and happiness and kindness. You know what I mean? Like that's like a different level of confidence.
Yeah.
And I really take pride in being one of those guys who can set the example for other people. You know what I mean? Because like that negativity is just like so easy. But being positive and being the person who's going to be an uplifter to others is so difficult.
Right.
But when you're the person who can set that tone, it naturally starts to like impact the people around you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. And I honestly, one of the things I live for is, you know, obviously I'll be at the gym. I have like this cut off, nails painted. I got the chain hanging. I look like a complete douchebag, but it's just my vibe, you know? And people, when I first meet them, they're like, man, I thought you were the biggest douchebag when I first saw you. But now you're super cool. You're chill, you know? And it's just like, I mean, at first glance, I could see like how I can come across as like a douchebag with, you know, the faux hawk and the chains and the nail polish, the shoes. But for me, I wanted to be that different version of just like, people may look at me and be like, that guy is a big douchebag or whatever. But when they get to know me, like, dude, that guy is just so dope. You know, I want to hang out with that dude. He's sick. And that's not coming from a cocky. It's just like, I just want to be a good person, you know, just to love on people and just be a cool dude. You know?
Man, there's just like so much power in that. We could talk about that forever.
Absolutely.
But what I want to kind of pivot into now is, so your role as a professional speaker, right? One of the things that I think a lot of people think of is like, I'm going to go speak at conferences and all this kind of stuff. But when I heard that you were going into these different jail systems and speaking the word, how did you get onto that path? And like, was that something that you thought about naturally?
Never.
Okay.
No, when they first offered me, so one of my great friends, offered me the job and I was like, dude, I know nothing about prisons. Like, I've never been to jail, never been to prison. Like, I don't know anyone that's been in prison, you know? So I was like, I don't know how I would do, you know? And I got hired kind of just to do sales and kind of speaking would be implemented in that every now and then. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to give it a shot. Because at the end of the day, I was thinking, I was like, yes, there are inmates behind bars and there's people that have done terrible things, but kind of what clicked in my head is like, man, there's still people too. You know, I would talk with these inmates and, you know, there's people that, you know, are mothers and fathers and have kids and people that were principals and had great careers, but they got a DUI and messed up and unfortunately, you know, ended up in prison. And so like, obviously there's terrible people in jail, but there are also some good, decent human beings that made a terrible mistake. And so for me, in my head, I was like, I wanted to do something crazy and wild, and prisons was wild and crazy. And for me, it's like kind of being comfortable with being uncomfortable, you know, like really trying to grow myself and see, man, can I do this? And so for me, I just accepted the job. And then every now and then I would speak at, you know, a prison in Colorado and just kind of preach the word. And man, I will say, talk about speaking and being nervous. Yeah. When you're up there and you see the blood, the Crips, and every gang, everything's segregated by race, and they're all just looking at you. Guys that are 6'9", tatted head to foot, and you're just like, and here I am with a chain and nail polish. Like, this guy's going to preach the gospel to us. But I can't tell you, like, those guys were like super welcoming and appreciative that, you know, I would come in on my free time away from, you know, my daughter and speak to them, you know. And so for me, I just kind of saw it as an opportunity just to continue working on my speaking, obviously in a way different environment, but just being myself. And like, I'm not going to relate to these guys as like, you know, an inmate or someone that's went through like crime or anything, you know. But for me, it's like kind of like talking about mental health. Like, I know most of those guys are dealing with mental health and the struggle of being behind bars and not seeing their families. And so for me, I would just be like, in my head, what's the best message I can give to these guys? And, you know, through the Bible and what God has taught us through the Bible, and just best relate to them. And, you know, kind of also be on the same journey, but on a different journey, you know, like experiencing mental health and, you know, how God has taught us to overcome it and to use it to our advantage. And so, but yeah. I
mean, it's kind of like those paths that you talked about, right in the very beginning of like going into the fire stations and like being on a different path and everything like that. So do you mind kind of sharing some of your message with, like, when you stand up in front of the crowd at a prison, right? What are kind of things that we're really touching on?
Well, sometimes, it's different. Every time is different, you know? I kind of just will spend like that time of like preparing a message and really being like, literally open up to God, being like, hey, what do you want me to say? You know, and sometimes I won't hear God, you know, for like hours. And I'm just sitting there reading. I'm like, I don't know. Next thing you know, more time comes. I got to spend time praying. I basically have like this prayer closet where I just lock myself in the room and just kind of sit in darkness and silence and just, that's when I hear God the loudest, is when I'm the most silent.
Yeah.
And so basically I would just kind of just let God, you know, throw thoughts and stories in my head. I'm like, all right, I'm going after this. But one of my favorite scriptures I shared in prison is like, whatever we bound on earth is bound in heaven. Whatever we loose on earth is loose in heaven. Meaning like, I bound depression, I bound anxiety, I bound this. And it's like this crazy like dimension of like spiritual is like, hey, I bind this. It's not going to happen. You know? So for me, I was telling like, hey, I was dealing with anxiety and depression and doubt. And I was just like, I bind this in the name of Jesus. I bind it. And next thing you know, the more I kept binding it, the more it had less power over me. But I lose gratitude. I lose love. I lose forgiveness in my life. And so that's one of the scriptures, like, it's so powerful. And like, I don't know how, you know, the universe works and all the frequencies, energy, but I know scripturally, like, man, whatever I bind, I take control of, it's not going to affect me or have a stronghold over my life. And so I would basically lose positivity in my life. And so that's kind of the things that I would just share, just be like, man, this is a verse that really speaks to me. This is how I've implemented in my life. And I just share it with them. Sometimes it sticks with them. Sometimes it doesn't. But, you know, after you're done speaking, they always come back and be like, man, I needed to hear that. And so, but like I said, the best like message I give have all come through like my personal life. You know, when I would talk to the teenagers, you know, I talked about, you know, how my parents got divorced and, you know, I have a great relationship with my dad, but, you know, I kind of had daddy issues and it was nothing against him or whatever he's done. It's just, I don't know, maybe the trauma of divorce or whatever it may be. But I would always, you know, talk about kind of how I was raised and my life and how it was hard for me as a kid, but yet how, you know, we see God as a heavenly father and a father that will never leave us, that will never forsake us. And I would just basically just preach. It's like, man, God is a dad that's going to love us unconditionally, that loves us so much, that's going to take care of us. Like if he's faithful to feed the birds, he's faithful to feed us. And, those were like my best messages, and just like, man, this is how I see God, as, you know, a heavenly father that would take care of us. And even though our earthly fathers may fail us, and they're humans. Like, I know I'm going to make mistakes with my daughter, but at the end of the day, I'm going to point my daughter to God that will never fail her. And so, yeah, those would be like the messages I would preach, is something that, you know, has affected my life and just tie it into it, you know.
That's really powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard one time on YouTube, I was watching this video, and this guy was talking about, he didn't have any type of faith, right? He was like, I don't believe in God. And he was like, you know, I've had all this negative stuff that's happened to me and yada, yada. And one of his friends came up to him and was like, so let me ask you a question. If you had a child today and they were like, I hate you, Dad. I don't want to talk to you. You've done me so wrong, blah, blah, blah. Would you stop caring for them? And the way in which it kind of like internalized for me was like, there's so much that we in the moment react to, but if we have a relationship with someone who truly cares about us, then we can really do no wrong. Right. You know what I mean? And like, that's what I hear you kind of echoing in that message as well.
That's so funny you say that, because I literally just got off the phone before I came here talking to a friend, and we're talking about the story of the prodigal son, and I'm pretty sure you're familiar with it, but the son runs off, goes to all these strip clubs, blows all his fortune, money, and saving, realizes, you know, I can't be living like this anymore. Like, I'm literally living with pigs and dirt and shit right now. And back at home, I had everything taken care of. I was living the life. And here I was living life, was going to all these strip clubs and blowing all this money. And so, you know, the son comes back, and the dad comes running up to him and welcomes him home and throws him a huge feast and stuff. And, you know, my friend was going through some things with his family, and he's like, yeah, someone had told me that story. It's like, even though I'm so mad at, you know, my sibling, I have to remember what God said in the Bible and be like, hey, I'm going to run after you. I'm going to love on you. I'm so glad that you're home. And I told him, I was like, yeah, if my daughter had, you know, had done that, I would do the same thing. I'd be like, I'm just so glad that you came back. I love you so much. Like, obviously there's going to be accountability afterwards. You know, I want her to be back on the right path. I don't want her to go back and to that old lifestyle. But, you know, at first I want to know that she always has a place with me, that I'll love her unconditionally, just the way that God has loved me unconditionally, you know?
Man, that's so powerful.
Yeah.
And because it's like, you know, I know that people are going through different experiences, especially in the last couple of years with the pandemic and stuff like that. Like so much has changed.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And I feel like we've lost a lot of the faith that we have in like the greater good, no matter what you believe in, what your religion is. It's, you know, that higher belief in something is going to be there for you. You know what I mean? At the end of like your dark days, I think it's just something that more people need to hear. And it doesn't mean it always has to come into a religious sector. You know what I'm saying? But like that faith in itself is something that's super powerful.
Absolutely.
And I think more people need to kind of lean into that because there is something that is really precious about having faith for a higher good. You know what I mean? No matter what religion you're a part of.
Right. Yeah. For me, obviously as a Christian, faith is like everything for me. And like one of my favorite verses is like, you know, we walk by faith and not by sight. And so for me, it's like we could see like all the negativity in the world just crashing down. But for me, I literally have to walk by faith and walk in the promises and the commandments of God of like, hey, I know the world is crashing right now, but I literally have to walk by faith, even though what I'm seeing is completely different from my mindset and what I believe in. So for me, it's just literally walking in step of what God has said, you know, to be strong and be courageous. And you know, you could do all things through Christ who strengthens us. And so for me, it's literally just walking in faith. Even though the world may look completely different, that's the only way we can do it, is just literally walking by faith. Because the more that we, you know, if our faith is determined by what we're seeing around, we're going to be screwed. Yeah. In my opinion. Yeah. You know, like I'm just going to be defeated and destructed. Yeah. So for me, it's like to be different, it's just to walk by faith.
Man, I want to ask you a personal question.
Let's do it.
So when you go through really tough times, and I feel like often it's easy to be really hard on ourselves, you know what I mean, to be our worst critic. How do you kind of call audit to those moments when you're being overly harsh on yourself? Because I know a lot of people who listen to the podcast and watch are always we're always toughest on ourselves. Do you know what I mean? But like, what is a practical way in which Hunter Chaney kind of like reframes that perspective of being loving to yourself when like things aren't going well? You know what I mean? I'm sure that 2-year journey of you deciding to be a firefighter and then having to go through the ups and downs of that process maybe tested your faith and your confidence. So like, how do you kind of reset in those toughest times?
Man, I'll just explain kind of what's worked for me. I know everybody's different and how, you know, they deal with things differently. But for me, it's like my prayer closet, so to speak, like getting away from the world and like literally having those hard moments of like, okay, what the fuck is happening? What is going on? Like it comes to a moment where like I need to have that conversation, dialogue with myself. I don't like, it's good to seek counsel and to ask for others' advice, but there comes parts in my life where it's like, okay, I need to really know what's going on, like what Hunter Chaney is thinking. Why is he experiencing this? How can he overcome it? And ultimately like have that conversation with God as well, of praying. So for me, it's like literally shutting the door and it just being pitch black. And I can't tell you, like, those are times where it's been absolutely the worst, but when I walk out of the closet, it's like completely life changing. It's like, man, now I know where I'm going, the direction I'm headed to. Like, obviously I still feel like shit, but hey, at least I have a different perspective of like, okay, now I know what needs to be done. Another way for me was just working out. Like working out has just become like the biggest therapy for me. Cause it's like, I was reading books on like trauma and like how physically we can store trauma. And so for me, like I could feel anxiety. I can feel all these things going up and I was like, I need to move. I need to lift some weight. I need to just kind of go in my own little world, put my headphones in and just work out. And just changing on my lifestyle as well, like not going on Instagram as much, because it's like even with the news of how much negativity, and just realizing, being self-aware of like how much negative things of what's being put inside my body. Because we say at the church all the time, the eyes and the ears are portals that go within you, you know, like what you're hearing and what you're watching. You know, if you're constantly just watching negative things, why do you think you're experiencing negativity or anxiety? Because all you're watching is the news. All you're hearing is gossip. All you're hearing is like the terrible things that are happening. So for me, it's like, okay, I need to be listening and watching different things that are really going to uplift me rather than just put me down, you know?
And that's incredibly powerful because, you know, I often talk about our mental health diet. You know, everybody today seems to be super vigilant about the things we put into our body physically. Like, I'm a vegan, or I'm keto, or I'm a carnivore, or I'm whatever diet. But often I don't think we give ourselves that sense of awareness to be able to recognize the things we see and the things we hear form our internal diet. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
In our mental state as well, which like a lot of people don't pay attention to.
Yeah. It just like kind of happens subconsciously. They think, oh, this won't affect me as much. But if you keep watching the same news over and over again, it's going to build up over time, you know? And so for me, I really live by like kind of like my therapy journey was like, how am I going to feel physically, emotionally, and spiritually? And so for me, like I would change my diet, you know, a diet that was like more kind of natural, holistic, like just eating, you know, fruits, meats, kind of like if it came from the ground, if God made it, then I would eat it, you know? So just clean up my diet and then go into therapy on the emotional level of like, you know, obviously I'm experiencing so many different emotions, you know, kind of just filtering that and then stop listening to social media and kind of just reading good, positive, uplifting books. And then obviously spiritually, like that's when I was like, I need to go to church now more than ever. You know, I need to start praying now more than ever. And so just really like implementing those practices in those 3 different areas of life. So emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And when you do all those 3 things, man, I can't tell you like the change that has happened in my life from doing those things.
Do you track kind of like your daily activities? So one thing I'm really into right now is I have a form on my computer over there that I literally track all my day activities, and I've got it barred out in a graph now, so I can visually see like what's going on, and I can correlate back to like the days when I have off days. Is it because I got less sleep? Is it because I ate these certain type of things? Is it because I didn't do these activities? Right. And the reason I started doing this because I follow Rob Dyrdek on social media.
Love him.
And he tracks everything that he does, like from sitting down at this podcast to how long it took to get home. And he's like, I have a spreadsheet that I had built, and now I can tell down to the percentage of how much I work, how much I practice faith, how much I spend time with my kids. And it gives me a game plan of what I can reverse engineer. Do you ever think about that kind of stuff?
No.
Yeah. Okay. I just wondering.
That's really cool. And some people, they operate like that, and that's awesome. For me, it's like, I have the worst ADHD. I probably would do that for a day and be like, something else happens. So yeah, kind of like my personality is just like going with the flow, but I still have like a, how do I say it? I have I guess in some way a strict schedule, but I always leave it to be flexible. So like, I always wake up early in the morning. I will say I do have a routine. I just, I guess I don't put in a graph. Or
And this is something I'm new because like I'm really bad at sticking with things. You know what I'm saying? So this new initiative. So when you just said like I would give up on it, like I'm really like hammering home, like, dude, you gotta keep documenting this stuff if we want to actually see the difference.
Totally. And if that works for you, great. I just know myself. I know it's not going to last. But I kind of have like a schedule within myself of like, I wake up in the morning, I spend time reading my Bible, I have breakfast, and then I go to the gym. And then basically from like those, I spend like 2 to 3 hours at the gym because I work out, do cardio, hit the sauna. That's kind of like my therapy session of like my alone time with myself, listening to music. And then afterwards, that's kind of like my free time. I'm just like, all right, you know, just kind of do whatever you want, you know, go to the pool, hang out with my daughter, walk the dogs, whatever it may be. So I kind of have like a set schedule. It's just, I don't know.
It sounds like you also have like those non-negotiables. Though.
Right. Yeah. Like I have to go to the gym. Like it's just a non-negotiable. It has to happen.
Yeah.
You know, but then with the firefighting schedule, it's just 2 days on and 4 days off. So I just know within those 2 days I'm working, you know, and that's a non-negotiable, obviously. But within those 4 days, it's like, okay, we'll leave the nighttime open to hang out with friends or go on dates, whatever it may be. But like, the morning for me is such a prime time for me. It's just like the best way to like be myself and, to experience like the highest version of myself and to feel at my best. That's what I was trying to go. To feel my best is mornings to myself. And I kind of stick to it religiously. Of just like, hey, this is my time with God in the morning, breakfast, hitting the gym. And then afterwards I leave it open. Because I couldn't work straight. That's just my personality, you know, like I need to have, and that's why I just have that flexible time towards the end of the day. But for some people like Rod Dyrdek, they have to have that, and that's cool, and it works for him, and obviously he's killing it. I just know how I operate and what works best.
I mean, that sense of self-awareness is really important. As I've gotten a little bit older, I've found that when I get into some of those ruts I don't prioritize serving myself first before I serve others. And I've recognized that going to the gym, the same as me, is like a non-negotiable. I have to do it because it's my time.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And when I can start the days off by doing that, I feel so much ready to like serve other people because I know that I've been selfish with my own time. You know what I mean? That's huge for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think self-love is extremely important. Like the best way I can love others is how well I love myself. You know, like if you imagine like, for me, it's like I always imagine a bucket, like what am I putting in this bucket? Because ultimately that bucket's going to overflow into someone's life. And so for me, it's like, okay, well, what am I putting my bucket in? Because it's going to be poured into my daughter, you know? And so for me, it's like I want to give her the best bucket. You know, I know it's super corny, but I love those like weird illustrations. Those like,
I'm visual as well.
Yeah, we're constantly carrying these buckets and we're constantly pouring into people. And for me, like I want my bucket to be overflowing with great things because it's just going to pour over. And so for me, sometimes like if I don't work out, if I don't take care of myself, I'm giving someone an empty bucket and a couple of drops, which is not going to do too much.
Yeah, you cannot pour from an empty cup out of an empty bucket.
Exactly. It's just nothing, you know? So for me, I want it to be overflowing with great substance, something that's fresh, you know? But yeah.
That's powerful, man. I love that. One of the other topics I want to talk about was, and we talked on this a little bit, but I heard a quote the other day and I wanted to bring it up to you. I was watching a TikTok or an Instagram, whatever it was. And this guy was talking about, he was like, I was at church the other day and the pastor said, God told me to love my enemies. And so I started to love myself. And it was like something that really sat with me because it's like, I don't have a lot of enemies in life.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? But I do have those two wolves inside that love to fight back and forth. And I just recognized in him saying that I need to be more loving to myself. And you touched on self-love there. But that practice is so difficult because I feel like we're always so busy. Do you know what I mean? There's always so much other stuff to do.
Right.
So what is your perspective on that saying?
I mean, that quote rocked my world because it's like I've never heard of, you know, that. I mean, I've heard of that scripture, but just never put that in like a different perspective.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just like, man, how am I trying to say it? Yeah, I don't know. That quote rocked me.
Yeah, I know. It's sat really heavy with me because it's like I'm my own enemy more times than not. You know what I mean? And as I get a little bit older, I just need to recognize that putting that unrealistic pressure on myself, you know what I mean, has never really served me. And I was actually watching a podcast before you came over today. And one of the things the guy said was, I am always nice to my future self. It's always served me incredibly well. And when I'm not nice to my future self, I always find myself kind of like short-sighted and not giving that future version of me the support that they need. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm just always on this vision of like, how can I self-improve and how can I become a better version of myself? And often it's putting or doing the necessary work today so my future self can look back and be like, I'm really proud of you, man. Thank you for like putting me in this position to win, you know?
So yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, for me, like over the past like year and a half, I've really had to like take control of my own self-love, of being like protecting my energy. Cause it's like kind of what you're saying, like we're constantly so busy. Like how do we find time? It's like, yeah, we have like 24 hours a day and then 16 hours or 8 hours we sleep. But for me, it's like, why can't I give myself at least a couple hours a day? You know, like just to myself, you know, I can give everyone else, you know, 16 hours that I'm up, but why not take advantage and take control of like, this is a 2 to 3 hours that I need for myself, you know, because at the end of the day, I'm still going to be here. People come and go in my life. You know, we have friends from high school, kind of fizzles out. But for me, it's like, it's just me, you know, I'm constantly going to be living this life. So why not give myself these 2 to 3 hours? And so for me, it's like, just protecting my energy and valuing myself and being like, because God has created us differently, unique, you know, like we're one in a kind. We're not the same. There's no one that's exactly like Hunter Chaney. There might be someone that might look like me, but there's no one that's like Hunter Chaney. For me, it's just like realizing, hey, I'm unique. I'm different. I'm just going to love myself. I love the way that I am. And I'm going to surround myself in different places and environments that are going to kind of share that same value. You know, like the best way I can put it is like, so I was on a date a couple months ago and this girl was super attractive, right? And she comes in, you know, it's going great for the first 5 minutes. And next thing you know, it just tanks. And I don't know why, like I'm pretty fun, charismatic. I'm asking like good questions, you know, like, hey, what's your favorite color? You know, probably too weird, but that's just the way I am. And it just wasn't going well. And I remember she had gone up and went to the bathroom, and I was literally sitting there. I'm like, am I really going to waste the next hour, you know, just coming up with these stupid questions, you know, or am I going to really just be like, hey, it's not working. I value my time. I value my energy. I value my resources. It's okay to leave, you know? And she came back. I was like, hey, I know it's not working. You're not interested, and it's cool. So I'm basically giving you a get out of free jail card, and you can leave right now.
What was her reaction?
Oh, she was shocked. Yeah, she was completely shocked. But it's just like, hey, I just know you're not interested, and it's cool. Like, not every day it's going to go successfully, you know? But for me, it's just like kind of having that courage and that bravery to be like, hey, I know you're super hot, and it's great, but I'm not going to sit here and kind of waste your time, let alone waste my time. And trying to force something to happen that's not meant to happen. And so I was like, hey, you know, it's cool. Like, don't feel obligated to stay. Like, it just wasn't working. You know, the vibes weren't there. The chemistry wasn't there. And it's cool. It just didn't work. And she's like, no, I'm going to stay. I'm like, listen, it's cool.
No, what I'm telling you is like, I'm about to dip.
I just want you to leave. I'm trying to tell you very nicely. But yeah. And so I kind of told her again, like, hey, you're more than welcome to leave, you know? But for me, and the day ended up going great. Like, it was awesome. So I'll leave it at that. But the whole point of that story was it's like, even though I'm with some attractive, extremely dime, you know, that's just out of this world beautiful. For me, it's like, I could care less, you know, because I value myself. I value my time. I value my energy. Like, even though something great looks on the other side, I still got to value myself. And if this date isn't working, if the vibes and chemistry is not working, I'm not going to force it to make it work. I'm just rather going to be like, hey, I value this time. I value my energy and pouring into myself into someone. Why pour myself into someone that doesn't really care? You know? And a lot of times we do that. It's just like, man, I want this relationship to work. I hope this business deal works out. It's just like, why are you constantly trying to pour yourself into something that they're truly not interested in? And so that could happen in relationships, in business. It's like, I remember trying to make sales, and like this person's like, I'm not interested. I'm not interested. It's like, I know you're not interested, but I'm going to make you interested.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and for me, it's just like, hey, if they're not interested, it's cool. Great. You know, at least I gave everything I got. I communicated my intentions, whatever it may be. If they're not interested, they're not interested. I'm not going to force something to happen, because at the end of the day, like, I'm all about relationships. And that's how it kind of worked in my, you know, when I worked at prison, working in like partnerships and sales, is like, for me, it's all about building relationships. You know, that's what I'm great at. That's why I know it. So for me, it's just like constantly building that relationships, and I would have the biggest deals that would happen because of those relationships. But a lot of times we try and force things that happen that are not meant to happen. You know, it ends up hurting in the long run. So for me, it's just valuing that time and energy and just going after it. So,
dude, I mean, that's a real life lesson there. So this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, right here. So I heard him one time say the same thing. He was like, I've come into big meetings and I'll sit across the table from another chief marketing officer at like a Fortune 100 company, and they don't like what we do. And sometimes I'll literally leave, because it's like, I'm not going to sit here and try and convince you, because I have enough self-worth that it's like, I'm not going to waste my energy and try and put it into something that's not going to be there. And like, when I hear you say that, it's like the amount of respect that it takes to sit across the table from somebody, especially like when you're in a dating scene, you know what I'm saying? And be like, listen, this isn't working out for me. You know what I mean? It's like almost like flips the table of like the power dynamic. You know what I mean? It's
and she even said like afterwards, she was like, you know, she's like, no one's ever done that before. Like, usually these guys would be, you know, at her feet, you know, like, oh, let me do this, having everything handed to her. And rightfully so. I mean, she's a beautiful person. And so, I mean, a lot of guys, I guess, in the past I've dated her, or, you know, would just sit through that weird, awkward silence of an hour, and she doesn't have to do much. But for me, it's just like, hey, you are extremely attractive, but I value myself. I value this time, this energy. And if you're not interested, it's cool. Like, I'm going to keep moving forward. I'm going to keep going down the path that God has me. But it's like, if they're not interested, I'm not going to waste my time. You know, and it kind of flipped the script in her mind. I was like, whoa,
100%.
This guy's built different. You know, like, now I'm interested, because he's willing just to leave this date. No one's ever left before. And not saying I did that on purpose. You know, a lot of people
But that
think,
was your truth, though.
Yeah, that's my truth. They think of like, oh, he's just playing games. I was like, no, I'm not playing a game. I literally was like,
I'm going to go kick it.
Yeah, I'm just like hang out and chill, you know? But But yeah, that's what I love about Gary Vee. It's just like, you know, I'm more than happy to walk away from big business deals. Because at the end of the day, let's say that business deal happened, through my experience, it ends up being more of a burden down the line. Even though you just made a transaction deal, ends up being just a huge burden because they're a constant pain in the ass. They're a terrible partner. It's just like, why deal with that?
Yeah.
You know, for me, it's like, if the first engagement doesn't work out and they're not interested, hey, it's cool. That doesn't mean it won't happen later on in life.
Yeah.
It could. You know, people come and go. It's different CEOs, whoever it may be. They all change. People leave different jobs, positions. So for me, it's like, it's probably a great business deal, just not right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, just not a good fit.
Exactly.
Man, that's powerful.
It's all timing.
It is.
So.
I mean, and this is like, you know, what is the point of trying to force something? You know what I mean? Like you said, you articulated it perfectly, so I'm not going to try and do it again. But, you know, when we try and force things, you naturally just have that intuition. You know what I mean? And I think when we've talked on a couple topics today about like your confidence, you know what I'm saying? And like how you present yourself, humans are incredibly good at detecting bullshit.
Right.
And so it's 100%. Like when we're true with ourselves, other people can naturally pick up on that. Yeah. And it's something that's almost infectious. You know what I mean? So I'm not surprised why your date ended up going so well because you were honest to yourself. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And then everything else kind of aligned with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, that's
just,
crazy.
Like I said, being authentic and being genuine is just going to emulate the highest frequency, you know?
So I have a couple questions for you. So being in the dating scene now, how much has stuff changed? I know we talked about this a little bit at the gym, but it's like, what's going on out there? You know what I'm saying? From a man of faith perspective, from someone who's confident and understands their self-worth, like what's up out there these days?
It's different. I would say technology is just, it's really affected the dating game, you know? And you know, I guess like back in the older days, obviously like there weren't as many options, you know, there wasn't so much like technology and social media and these dating apps. Like you kind of were just based on going like who you see at the bar or at the gym or at church or wherever it may be. Now it's like you could set your location anywhere in the world and connect with someone. And what's different about the dating game, and I'm guilty of this as well, is like, you know, there's someone that comes across on your Hinge and you're like, oh, she's cute, you know, kind of have similar interests. And then you hit like, but next thing you know, someone else comes along and they're 10 times better than what you just look. And so it's constantly like having this mindset of like, oh, someone's better going to come. Someone's better going to come. And it's like, for me, it's like, I'm not giving any of these women a chance because I'm constantly thinking that there's someone better that's going to come along. And so it's so different nowadays. Like, but for me, it's like being self-aware about it and trying to navigate it and ultimately just being myself, you know. That's, I guess, the only way I'm going to have a girlfriend in the future is just being myself. But yeah, it's just a different game. I wouldn't say it's bad. Yeah. It's just different. And it's just understanding the times that we live in. And I mean, obviously the concept of marriage is going down. No one wants to get married anymore. So it's just kind of like understanding what people's intentions in dating are, you know, like, are they wanting to get married? Do they want to have kids? Like, and do you have those conversations when you first hop on a date with somebody? Or you kind of like I kind of save it for like the second or third date, you know, like I kind of just vibe out in the first date, like the first 10, 15 minutes. If it's not good, I'm like, hey, I'm out of here, you know, like. But yeah, just kind of just understanding people's intentions. Like, you know, one day I'd like to get married again, and you know, but who knows? I have no idea. Yeah. So I'm just, like I said, I think what girls are attracted to now is like guys that are focused on their mission and their purpose. For me, like, you know, go on dates is fun and awesome, but at the end of the day, I'm really just focused on where God is leading me in this moment. You know, like being a firefighter is amazing. I love it, but I feel like there's another step in my life that God has me in that I'm going to explore. And I think it's through communication. I just don't know what area it is, you know? So right now I'm just like doing things like this, like doing podcasts. Hopefully it leads to another podcast or a speaking engagement. I have no idea, but I know like if I'm faithful with the small things, God's going to trust me with bigger things. And so for me, that's what I'm focused on, is continuing to speak more. And so, yeah, the dating scene is awesome, but all that to say is like, if I put my focus on all these girls, it's just going to be just troublesome. And so for me, it's just remaining faithful to my purpose, and I have no idea where God's leading me, but I'm excited. I mean, you're walking in that faith. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like you said, by faith. And you know, one of the things I think about, especially from a guy's perspective as well, is we
you know, especially when you have a mission in mind, you're keeping yourself spiritually, emotionally, physically fit,
Right.
you become more and more valuable. Do you know what I mean? And like, this is one of the biggest dichotomies that I continue to think about. It's like, okay, what if a relationship doesn't work out? Possible, based on the stats and everything that we talk about today. But I am going to continue to stay in my lane, and I will continue to create value in my own world, and I'll attract the right person at the right time.
100%.
You know what I mean? And that's a tough mindset to be with, because of like all the pressure. I've had girlfriends in the past who are like, I want to have 4 kids by the time we're 22. And I was like, okay, we're 21, so that's not going to be possible. You know what I mean? But it's just like an interesting dichotomy that's out there, because, you know, the world in itself is changing. There's so many options out there now, but it's like the best way to continue to do your thing is just to continue to do your thing.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I get all my information from TikTok, and it talks about like the more that we're in a state of neediness, the more we repel. Yeah. And so for me, it's like, I'm looking for someone, and I got this from TikTok as well, someone to partner, not someone to sponsor. Like, I feel like in a relationship, like I'm looking for someone to partner with me in this kind of path that God has us on now, you know? And so someone to encourage me and uplift me, not someone constantly have to sponsor and just have everything kind of paid for and handed down. That's just my opinion. Yeah. Just someone to partner with, not so much to sponsor. And so, yeah, I mean, attraction's huge to me. So just attracting the right thing, the right person. Also, like, kind of what we talked about earlier, is walking by faith and not by sight. Like, I don't trust these apps to bring me the right person. I trust ultimately, like, God is going to bring someone in my life at the right time, at the right place, and then it's meant to be, you know? And so for me, I'm trusting in that. And so the more I act in trust, the more I can see that, the more women I guess attract, you know? But the more if I start to think to myself, I need a girl to, you know, make me feel loved and to make me feel happy, the more actually I start to repel. And it's so interesting. Like, I'm studying like energy now. So like the differences of energy of like neediness, and like girls can pick up on like if you're some needy guy, and it starts to repel them. But the more that you're confident within yourself, the more you value yourself, all the energy that you put back into yourself, the more that they're attracted to. So it's interesting. So for me, it's tough. Like, yeah, obviously I would love to have a girlfriend, you know, but I have to be self-aware and understand the state of energy that I'm in. Am I being needy right now? Or am I content? Am I satisfied? Am I grateful? Like, those are the energies I'm trying to attract. And
it's not just, I mean, people are watching today, we're talking about relationships right now, but it's not just relationships. But like another thing is like, because you've been doing what you've been doing, I was also attracted to you to be like, yo, bro, I need to get you on the podcast. So it creates other opportunities.
Exactly. Even with like the speaking engagement, like, you know, I could be sending out tons of emails. Hey, do you need me on my podcast? Do you need me to speak at this? Like, I typically don't do that. I ultimately is like, trust God of like, hey, I know you're going to bring these opportunities to me, but at the same time, I'm not going to just sit around my ass and just sit there. No, I'm going to prepare. I'm going to start practicing writing those messages and studying the Bible again, reading books, of like preparing myself for those moments, you know, because those moments will come, but I have to be prepared and ready myself. Yeah. You know? Wow. I even heard someone say this about relationships yesterday. It's like, yeah, you could be praying for, you know, a wife in the future, but are you the husband that's ready for that relationship? You know, like, are you that husband that's going to attract the right woman that they're looking for? And so for me, that rocked me. It's like, man, well, what kind of man am today that's going to attract the right woman? And so for me, it's preparing to be a great husband one day. So
yeah, I mean, you're going through that process right now. Right. You know, I was having a conversation with some lady yesterday. Her name was Diane, so it's not some lady. But we were talking about, you know, when we ask for things or we pray for things, like I want to be more confident or I want to be more positive. Often we are not given that mindset or that end goal. We're given the opportunities to practice being that person. You know what I'm saying? And that like has always been something that I've been really tried to be conscious of. It's like, if I want to be a better leader, then I'm not going to instantaneously be a better leader, but I'm going to be given opportunities to practice being that person who I want to be. You know what I'm saying? We're never just given stuff, but we're given those opportunities to start flexing that muscle to build that skill.
And I love what you said about that. It's just like, I kind of mentioned this earlier, like if we're faithful with the small things, we'll be entrusted with bigger things. So it's like, we're all leaders, because, you know, definition of leadership is having influence. So like for me, like we all think like leaders have to be like the CEOs of, you know, the only way you can be a leader is having 30 people under you. Like, no, that's not true. Like, I'm a leader right now with my daughter, you know, having influence over her. And I'm faithful with that. I know God's going to bring more people in different areas of my life, whether it's at the gym, whether it's in business and firefighting, whatever it may be. If I'm faithful with my daughter and being a great leader to her, then ultimately God's going to entrust me with bigger responsibilities. So if you're faithful with the small things, even with your girlfriend, with your parents, being a leader within your family, God's going to ultimately bring you those opportunities because he's seen you do the small things and being faithful with that. So for me, it's like, oh, I'm going to be a leader when I'm an owner of a company. It's like, no, you're a leader right now with your little brother, with your family member, whoever it may be, your friends. Like, just be the leader that you are today, because ultimately it's going to prepare you for the future.
Yeah. I mean, there's always more work to be done, right? I mean, I heard a saying the other day, it's kind of popping into my mind right now, and I'm trying to articulate this correctly. It's like, if you only do the work that you are paid for, you're never going to be paid more. But if you do the work that you are not paid for, you're end up going to be paid more. Yeah, and I was like,
good.
Damn, dude, that's really true. Do you know what I mean?
Really, yeah.
Because it's like today, especially in the work culture and stuff like that, people are like, I'm not paid enough to do this. Yeah. But it's like, do you wonder why your career is stagnant? Because you're not willing to go above and beyond and actually start practicing those skills to become a better version of yourself. So it's like, you have to put those reps in. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, the Bible talks a lot about like whatever you harvest, you reap. You know, so the more that you keep putting work in, I love hard work because it's like there's so much fruit that comes from it. It's like the hard work sucks. Like, I know hard work in like kind of like the motivational speaking, it's like it's awesome, it's great, but when you're actually working and it's hard, it freaking sucks. Yeah, it does. You know? But it sucks in the moment. But when you continue to put all that hard work, especially like working out, that's the best way I can put it in my life. Is like the more that I'm grinding at the gym, the more that I'm putting work in, the more that I'm strict with my diet, the more that I'm disciplined, like the more I'm going to reap the benefits of that. And it's going to come. You know, it's cool hearing compliments like, oh, you're big, you're strong. It's just like, yeah, you know why? It's because I put thousands of hours into the gym. You know, like this pastor said this, is like the greatest version of you is not the I could do anything in the world, but the greatest version of you is the most disciplined version of you. And so for me, that's always rocked my world of like putting it into my mindset of like just being so disciplined, being so faithful to small things, and ultimately working hard, because then I'm experience the most fruit from it, you know? Yeah. But yeah, that could happen in business, finances, whatever.
Dude, I'm going through this right now. It's like, you know, I recognize what got me here is not going to get me there. Right. And so it's like when I am at my best self, I am fucking dialed in. Right. I'm working out. I'm eating correctly. I'm not smoking weed. I'm hanging out. I'm not hanging out with people who I don't need to be hanging out with. I'm getting enough sleep. And there's almost a sense of confidence that comes from knowing that you're doing the work, and it almost compounds. Like the thing I love about the gym is it's a delayed gratification process. Do you know what I mean? Like you have to put the work in for weeks, and then your body starts like showing up, and you're like, oh damn, that was 4 Tuesdays ago. Exactly. You know what I mean? And like that's something I love about the gym, but it teaches you so many lessons that you have to be consistent. You have to push yourself, and the results will come if you just stick on the path. Absolutely. You know? I
will say that's one of the things that I do track, that I started doing the past 3 months of like, it's that saying of like that definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting
different results.
And so for me, it's like, man, I wanted to get bigger and stronger. And I was like, man, I'm working out. You know, I was like, why am I not getting bigger? And I came across another video on TikTok, of course, and it talked about Arnold keeping track of his workouts and the weights. And it's just like, okay, why not try that simple practice? It's like, all right, if I'm doing dumbbell bench press, like, usually I would just go with the flow of like, okay, I feel like doing 80s today and doing that for 12 reps. And I kind of feel a little weak today, so I'll just go 60s and do like 15 reps. But the second that I started tracking my workouts of like, okay, last week I did 5x5, 100 pounds on the flat bench. So next week, what I'm going to do is increase it to 5x5 with 105 pounds. And the more that I started tracking and sticking to the script, so to speak, the more I started to see results. So to add into what you're talking about with the graphs and your time and schedule, it is so important to track. In me, it's in a completely different area of my life of like working out. Like that's when I saw the most fruit, is keeping track of like, okay, last week, I know I did this week. This week, I have to push myself and do something bigger, because that's the only way that I'm gonna get bigger.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and that's kind of like where the whole emphasis of tracking really came from.
Right.
There's a book right up behind you. It's called $100 Million Offers. Have you seen Alex Hermosi at all?
Uh-uh.
So this is 33-year-old entrepreneur, lives here in Vegas. This dude is huge. And he's got a portfolio of businesses that does like 200+ million a year, right? And he talks about in some of the toughest times when I feel like I'm lost, it's because I'm not tracking stuff. Yeah. And so it's like there's a Olympic weightlifter or a powerlifting coach who has a amazing way of getting small victories in every in every workout. Somebody sets a new PR in every workout. And so he tracks everything that you do. So it's like a clean. You did like 2 cleans at like 400 pounds. What if we do 402? Yeah. And like the fact that you're tracking that stuff gives you a track record to be able to refer back to. Yeah. And it's that sense of gratitude of like, oh, I'm making progress here is what keeps people going. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so it's like, you got to track stuff as small as it sounds, but it's a huge thing, just like writing stuff down. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now that you're saying it, I like when I look back at my notes and seeing like, man, I really did 105 for 5 times for 5 rounds. I'm like, that's crazy. I did that. Yeah. Now it gives me the motivation of just like, why not go for 110 and see what happens? But yeah, so I definitely do agree with like tracking things down and how important it is. And ultimately you start to see progress, and seeing progress gives you even more motivation. But yeah, for me, like for years, and I was doing it for like 6-7 years as I was working out, I would just go willy-nilly and just kind of throw weights around and just kind of go with the flow of like, I'll do this, I'll do that. But now for the past 3 months, I've seen the most gains when I started tracking my workouts. So yeah,
I don't know if it's just like that mental connection to the progress that we're making. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's something.
But like, I'm super into that mind muscle connection. That's something that's, I think, gotten a lot popular or a lot more popular in the last couple of years, is really just like visualizing the connection between the muscles that you're lifting. Right. You know what I mean? And like, you really start to see those gains. And I was like, this is really interesting. Do you know what I mean? When you're intentional with your work, you see the best outcomes.
Yeah. I don't know if you've heard of CT Fletcher, but
not really.
He's like this bodybuilding guy, and he's on YouTube, and he cusses a lot, but his whole thing is like, he'll be doing biceps and he's like, grow, motherfucker, grow. And like, he's looking at his biceps, but he's talking about the importance of like, you know, mind muscle connection and just how crazy that little small technique works of like really focusing on that body part and how it grows. Like, it's crazy, but yeah, that's what made me thought of it.
Do you have a perception of accountability? So I want to take the conversation in this direction. I think you might vibe with this. So in today's world, it's very easy for us to cast our blame away by pointing at other people. And I forget who I was listening to, but they were talking about accountability being a superpower that all of us have, but few of us choose to really like open up the chest. I've really been focusing in my entrepreneurial journey, in my self-development journey, in all the things I really focus on is an ultimate sense of accountability. Because I find that when I take ownership, as scary as that is for everything, I realize that everything's on me. And it's not like I'm trying to put undue pressure on myself, but I'm trying to just help my mind recognize that I have control over everything. So it's like when stuff doesn't go well in business, it's easy to be like, you should have done this, but like, it's much easier for me to point that finger and then see the 3 that are pointing back at me. Exactly. Do you know what I'm saying? So like, what is your perspective on accountability?
I love accountability. I think, as crazy as it sounds, my parents raised me in the right way to be more accountable. So it kind of came naturally. And for me, like what I think of is like, I hated giving power to other people that directed the outcomes of my life, if that makes sense.
100%.
Like, how dare you do that to me? And it's because of you that this happened. It's just like, I hated doing that. And so for me, it's like accountability is like, no, I got to take control of what I can control. And I hated giving my power and energy to someone that would have an effect on my life externally, or like trying, it's because of them that I didn't get this job. It's because of them that this relationship didn't work. And that might be true. But for me, it's like, okay, well, what could have I done better? You know, was there something I said? Was there something that wasn't said? And so for me, it's like with accountability, it's like, ultimately, it's just trusting with yourself and being like, kind of what you're saying is just having that power and control. And for me, it's like, I want that power and control for myself, because the more that I felt like I was blaming others, the more that I felt I was giving my power to them. So,
I I mean, it's just like something that I've really found myself going back to that mindset is just trying to reiterate like, hey, listen, you've got ultimate power in this situation. If things don't go your way, then how can we improve? Exactly. You know what I mean? Rather than casting the blame away to others. Because that's just like, at the end of the day, that's just a weak mindset to be in. Because at the end of the day, no one really gives two shits about really anybody, you know what I mean, other than themselves. And it's like, I have to just take ultimate accountability for everything. And I feel like you mentioned a little bit earlier, when you were talking about going into your, you know, journey of becoming a firefighter, if you went through those 2 years and you gave 100%, you can be okay without, 100%. You know, saying like, oh, it just didn't work out and it wasn't meant to be. Rather than being like, well, if I would have, you know what I mean? Like that mindset, I feel like.
Those guys didn't like me. You know, it's because of them I didn't get a job. It's like, no, not in my opinion. Like, I'm going to give it everything I got. And I know at the end of the day, like, it was because of me that didn't work out. You know, like, for me, it was like I was dead set. I knew I was going to be a firefighter. I wrote it down on my, you know, vision board, whatever it was. But I knew it was going to happen. And because I was testing for like 6 years, and I was constantly casting blame. I blamed my parents. I was like, it's because of you, you know, that I didn't get placed in the right opportunity. It's because of the relationships I didn't have. And I look at other people, it's because his dad was a captain, and I was given all these excuses. But at the end of the day, it came to myself. I was like, nope, I'm doing everything that I can. Doesn't matter. Like, obviously there's going to be some people that have relationships and different privileges that will make it happen. But for me, it's like, I'm literally going to put everything within my control and just use it to my advantage. So, I
mean, that's really powerful. I just continuously like go through this experience in my head of like thinking about the 85-year-old me. You know what I'm saying? It's like that version of Keenan is not going to regret the things that I went after, but often the things that I was too chicken shit to go after. Do you know what I mean? And like putting myself in that perspective has really helped me take some really big leaps. But it's also helped me be the happiest version of myself.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's my biggest fear, is literally laying on my deathbed and being like, I wish I had done it. And so I think about that constantly, of like my older self talking to me, of like, even if it's just talking to like a good looking girl and be like, oh my God, I'm so nervous, I'm too scared. Just be like, man, I want to be that guy that looks back and be like, I talk to anyone, you know, I wasn't afraid of any girl. Like, so for me, it's like having that perspective, be like, you know what, you're right. Like, I'm just going to do it, see what happens. And like, sometimes the best stories and the best things that happen come from rejection.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know?
It's so true.
The things that don't work out. And so for me, it's just like, I love stories. I love experiences. I love to see what life brings. And so for me, it's that having that conversation with my 85-year-old self and be like, okay, what would Hunter look back and be like, man, I'm so glad I did that. I'm so glad I went after this. I'm so glad I took a chance on myself of starting a podcast, of spreading positivity and working on mental health. Like, I'm glad, like, even though in the beginning it was tough, I'm glad I stuck with it. You know, who knows what happens from this? You know, this might lead to a different thing, you know, that if you didn't do this, you would have never experienced that new thing that comes along. So
there was something that you said to me the other day when we were in the gym, and you were talking about your preparation process for going to Columbia. And you were like, it was very subtle, and it really hit me heavy that day. You're like, I'm doing 500 sit-ups a day. And I was like, okay. But the thing you said after that, you were like, it's the consistency that really matters. Absolutely. And I put a LinkedIn post about that, and I like used you as a reference. And I was like, my friend told me this, blah, 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 in the gym. And so many people were like, it's so true. The consistency is the thing that matters, yada, yada. And so when we talk about like starting the podcast and doing all this kind of stuff, it's like, I'm interested to see what happens 10 years from now if I don't quit. You know what I mean? Like, what opportunities will happen if I just don't give up?
Exactly.
Because I'm tired of having that conversation. If it's 2 weeks from now, 6 months, a year and a half, I don't want to keep having that conversation with myself about like, what if you would have? You know what I mean? What if you just wouldn't have given up, bro? It's like, I've thought about so many things and I just haven't pursued them. And then I come back to the voice of my older self and I'm like, well, I mean, dude, if you wouldn't have given up, we'd be so much further. You know what I mean? And like that continues to fucking punch me in the face.
Yeah, consistency. I've always struggled with consistency because it's like, I don't even know like what to reference it or to like give an excuse. But for me, it's like, I don't know, fear of failure, fear of rejection. But it's just like, I would stick with one thing for like, kind of like have the motivation behind it. And then it just like fizzles out. And I'm like, it didn't, wasn't work out. I would try something else. And I felt like I got to a point where I was quitting on so many things in my life that I was just restarting so many different other things. You know, and that's kind of one of my regrets is, you know, like if I would just consistent in this area, like where would I be today? You know, like I was doing jujitsu for like 6 months and I was like, I'm just kind of done with it. The motivation behind it.
Yeah.
But I look back, I'm like, what if I stuck with jujitsu, you know, since I first started like 5 years ago? Where would I be?
Yeah.
I'd be a completely different person. I would whip some ass.
Y'all said nobody would fuck with you. You're like, Hunter, come fuck with this kid.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
So for me, it's like, it's learning from those moments of just like, I got to just be consistent with it.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, as stupid as it sounds, like that's kind of like my thing with July is like with different months, I want to pick something I can just be consistent with every single day for a month. Because for some reason, like if I'm consistent in this one area of doing 500 sit-ups a day, it's crazy how that bleeds and affects different areas of my life. Like being consistent with my diet, being consistent with working out, being consistent with going to the sauna, like being consistent, you know, since I'm healthy, going to work and not calling in sick, like all those things. Like it's crazy, like from that one little thing of just doing 500 sit-ups a day and how it just has a ripple effect in all different areas of your life.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just being consistent and just like seeing, like looking back, like obviously it's been paying off. It's like crazy, like the effects, but man, if I wasn't consistent, you know, from day 1 and then day 14, now day 21, it's just like, who knows? You know, I probably would have given up. You know, not have abs or anything. But
And I mean, I'm pretty sure you're solid when it comes to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there was a post I put on LinkedIn today, and I've really been trying to speak from a copywriting perspective. So all the content and all the shit that I write out online, I'm speaking to like a younger version of myself because that is who I'm most in tune with. And I realize that there's other people who need that sense of encouragement. And here's the example. I was talking about being consistent. So when I moved to Las Vegas in 2012, it was like October, right? I was at the time 287 pounds. So I was a lot heavier, dog. Oh my God, I've got some fat pictures I can show you. Yeah. And Dante McLean said to me, New Year's Day of 2018, or 2013, I'm sorry. Let's go to the gym every day this year and see what happens. And that's where my real gym process started. And so it was having that accountability partner to like push me consistently. But what I was talking about in this post that I put out today was we come across those moments of doubt where we almost think that this is the moment that stops us from going forward. And it's always, from my internal perspective, like I always cast blame towards other in those moments of like, I mean, Hunter's in shape because he probably has like a better diet plan. He's got resources to do all this kind of stuff. But it's like that internal voice that continues to lie to us that scares us away from really kind of leaning into who we are as a best person. That really scares the shit out of me. And it's not until I am consistent in other areas of my life, like you said, that it starts to bleed into all the other areas. Right?
100%.
And it's just like so interesting to kind of like think about the mindset that I think we all share in those moments of like, well, I mean, I think I'm just going to give up now. But at the end of the day, if you want to stop restarting, then you have to fucking stop quitting.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Dude,
and I'll say this, I bring it back to like physical fitness and health and physics because that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I learned the most from in my life. And I remember reading this Instagram post and it talked about, like, especially like in bodybuilding, there's so many different programs. There's so many different opinions. There's so many different like diets, you know, like one day eggs are good. The next day eggs are shit for you. And it's just like, it's so over the place. And for me, like I was struggling to like, okay, I have this vision of what I want to be like and have this type of body and like go after. And I'm getting inundated with all these different like opinions and programs and diets, and I was starting to go crazy. And it's just like, well, this program didn't work and this program didn't work. And it's just like, when I saw this Instagram post, it's like, it's not so much the program that's the problem. The problem is you not being consistent. And he would show like this picture of a vegan bodybuilder that obviously is in incredible shape, and then he would show this other bodybuilder who was not vegan that was doing his program and his diet, and they looked exactly the same. So for me, it's like, okay, it's not so much the diet or the programming, it's the consistency. Like both of those guys, how they got to where they were is because they were consistent. They were consistent in their diets and their training programs. So for me, it's like, all right, I'm going to pick one diet plan. I'm going to pick one training program and be consistent. Like it doesn't matter how I'm feeling. It doesn't matter what I'm going through. I'm just going to be consistent with it. And I can tell you like the results have been great. And it's not because it's like, it's this exact program that's going to work for you. It's like, no, just be consistent with one program, with one diet plan, and you'll see crazy results. But it's just being consistent with it.
And I feel like this is a macro issue that we deal with in society.
Right.
It's so an interesting statistic is like the gym space. So places where we work out, the entire space is like $64 billion.
Yeah.
Right.
Crazy.
The nutrition space, diets and like protein shakes and all this other kind of stuff is like 126 billion.
Yeah.
Why is it that the recipe is incredibly simple? Eat healthy, move more, you will lose weight.
We have overcomplicated it.
Yeah, but like I think what it is more so we all look for that shortcut.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's
100%.
like, well, if I'm just on that different type of protein or if I'm on that different type of program, then I'll get the results I look for. Yeah. But it's like if you really want to look in the mirror, it's like, no, dude, you're the fucking problem here. Yeah, exactly. And you're the one who's not being consistent with the work that you're doing. And that's why you want to go spend $100 on you won't spend $100 on a gym membership, but you'll spend $600 a month on nutrition. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And supplements and all that kind of stuff. It's
and
just
that's the key word is supplements. A lot of people think they're going to get bigger and stronger from a supplement. It's like it's called supplement for a reason. It's going to help you, but that's not the main thing. And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like the main thing is eating healthy, going to the gym, being consistent, and you'll start to see results. But we've overcomplicated. It's like you got to get this protein, you got to get these BCAAs, you got to get a post-workout, intra-workout drink, and it's just like, what the hell? And obviously, it's just marketing. Yeah, you know, like.
It's like, or you could go do the fucking work. You know,
literally, exactly. You could do the work, eat clean, have water, have a protein shake, and you'll be good. You know, but for us, we get so psyched into of like taking the shortcut of like, I need to get these exact diet pills, and that's how I'm going to look like this. Like, no, they're just selling you on that. Yeah, they've really been put thousands of hours of gym.
You want to know what my favorite example of this is? Because we were talking about the dating scene and like social media, like BBLs. As an example, so the Brazilian butt lift, when girls go and get like these gigantic asses, but they could just spend time in the gym working out. Do you know what I mean? Absolutely. Like that is just like the most mind-blowing thing to me. It's like, wouldn't you rather build it and actually have it rather than be like 40 years old and be floppy and still have this big ass? Do you know what I mean? It's like, let's think down the road a little bit. You know what I'm saying? But it's the exact same thing. It's just wild to me.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Like as I got older, and even from like a male perspective, like these guys would sell you on proteins and BCAAs and all these supplements. Like, okay, if I want to look like this guy, I got to take all these things that he's taking. It's like, no, that guy's for sure taking steroids, And for me, it's like I had to realize like I had this like blind trust of like these guys were sticking with these supplements. Like, no, he was taking Tren and D-ball. And it's just like, I would look like that too if I was taking steroids. And so for me, it's just like I'm trying to do things the more natural way. I'm just like and being okay with it. But just really just kind of calling bullshit on their marketing schemes and just realizing like, those girls have a great ass because they went and got, a BBL from it. Like, of course, they're going to come out with these workout programs and show a couple snippets of their Instagram and be like, this is exactly how you're going to get this ass. It's like, no, it's not the way it's going to take a lot longer and no surgery. But it's just, I get pretty passionate about it. But
no, I do too. And there's so
we're sold on the lie through all that,
We are. And it's like, so this goes into perfectly what I want to talk about next. So there's Alex Hormozi came out with this really interesting equation. It's called the value equation. And he runs all of his businesses and all of his products through this value equation. It's dream outcome on the top of the equation, likelihood of achievement divided by time delay and effort and sacrifice. Okay. So dream outcome, I want to feel less stressed, right? Likelihood of achievement is if I have to meditate, probably not going to do that consistently. So I don't meditate. But if I pop a Xanax, likelihood of achieving that is really easy. Delay or time delay of meditating is super tough. Right. And then if we talk about the same pill, it's like that's why marketing is so heavy today, because people are often willing to take the shortcut because they don't want the time delay. They don't want the effort and sacrifice. They want the dream outcome and the likelihood of achievement. And so it's like that's why Xanax is a multi-billion-dollar pill and there are no multi-billion-dollar meditation companies. Do you know what I mean? It's like crazy. We're not willing to do the work anymore, man. It's just crazy.
Yeah. Especially like with the times coming, like I was watching this TikTok video about how AI is just ruining jobs because of how quick and easy it is, And so, but it seems like we're constantly like taking the shortcuts of like, even like writing a sermon. I could write a sermon and spend like 40 hours, or I could go on AI and say,
ChatGPT.
I need this sermon written up. in exactly 17 minutes. I need you to say this, and just have it completely written out. And that's just a silly example, but it's like we kind of do that with all things of like, you know, like supplements. Like, oh, I just want to, instead of just going to the gym, I'd rather just take this crazy chemical pill and just have it completely shred fat. Like, I don't know what that's doing inside. Like, it's probably doing a lot more damage than it is good, but like, I don't know. In my theory and in my logic, it's like the easiest and the quickest thing is not always the best thing.
Rarely,
you know?
often.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it really is. Like, for me, I look at the long game and being like, it provides more of a substantial result. But the more, like, I feel like I give into quick and easy things, the more damage it does.
100%.
You know, it's just more of like a temporary feeling. Rather, I'm trying to go for consistency of like longer results and better results. So
I mean, I feel like building the skills
Right.
are the things that will play forever rather than taking the shortcut.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, I would rather be good at sales so I know for the rest of my life I can go sell stuff rather than using ChatGPT to like give me the perfect sequence to reach out to people. Do you know what I'm saying?
And a silly illustration, it's like cooking. Like,
Yeah.
what tastes better, a microwave meal or something that's home cooked?
That's
You
what I
know?
mean. Like, grandma's meals were slapping. You know what I mean? Did you ever see Spy Kids growing up?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So back in the day, I remember the Spy Kids movie. The one thing that stuck out about that was when they put those little packets inside of the microwave and they like hit the nuke button and like a Big Mac and fries popped out. Do you know what I mean? It was like, I wish I had that, but I don't wish I was eating the Big Mac. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's kind of the society that we've been like kind of inundated to. You know what I mean? And that stuff's just like super tough.
Yeah.
It really
rough.
is.
I even do that with like, it's crazy. It's like I can go to, you know, this place and have all my meals prepared for and spend a lot more money. But if I would just take the time and just go to Costco, grab all the meats that I need, all the fruits and veggies, like even though it takes longer, I'm actually saving a lot more money. But
Ton.
yeah, so for me, it's like I give in, obviously it's because it's time and scheduling where it's like I need to have these meals prepped and I don't feel like cooking. Like I'm still a human being, but it's like, man, if I just took the time and set a schedule, put in my schedule to like just cook, I'll save a lot more in the longer run. You know, financially wise.
Financially, but you're also investing into yourself.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? And like, that's the biggest point that I think is just super important. So, you know, Hunter, it's been absolutely amazing to have you on the show.
Been great.
You know, we've talked about so many different topics. You know, the fact that you've taken so many chances in your life and you've doubled down and invested into yourself is something that I'm sure everybody in the audience can benefit from. Because what I really take away from you is, you know, confidence, and the person who I see was not somebody who was born with those skills, but you've developed those through time. Absolutely. You know what I mean? And like, that is just so inspiring. And I know other people who are going to see you on the episode are going to love that too, man.
Well, I appreciate it. I thank you for what you're doing with mental health and doing this podcast. Like, you're shedding an incredible, great light. And thank you for being faithful to this and having me on. And I know God's going to do great things with this. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to have you come back for a time too.
Let's do it.
You know what I'm saying? Because I'm sure the comments are going to go crazy. If you guys had a favorite time of Hunter talking about a different topic or something super related to you, why don't you let us know down in the comments and we'll definitely get back to you.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What's one thing that you could leave with your viewers as like one lasting message? I listened to that with like the School of Greatness with Lewis Howes, and he'd always be like, if there's one message, I want to hear this from you. I guess I'm flipping the table right now.
This is great.
From the interviewee to the interviewer of just like, what's one, if like you're on your deathbed and with your kids, what's one thing that you would want them to know as you pass on to the next life?
You said it perfectly today. There's no replacement for the hard work. You know what I mean? And like, when you're in it, it seems like it's the worst thing in the world. Yeah. But when you look back on the hard work that you've done, you're not going to be disappointed. You'll be more proud in yourself. You know what I'm saying? And so like, that is the most important thing that I continue to kind of fortify in my own mindset is there's no replacement for the hard work. And if you're willing to do it, you're already doing 99% of the work that other people aren't going to want to do, you know? So that's my kind of takeaway.
It's so easy to be great these days.
Yeah.
Because so many people want the quick, being lazy.
I think it was Dana White the other day was like, I tell my kids this today. He was like, if you're a little bit of a fucking savage, you will destroy everybody out here because it's so easy to win, but everybody's too fucking soft and not willing to go through the things that they need to do to be successful.
Absolutely.
You know?
That's a great message to leave behind.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you, dog. Thanks so much, man. That was great.
Thanks again for everything.
Yeah. Cool, dog. Thanks, guys. Check you on the next one.